Welcome back to the internet. Today I will be your guide. Why would you want to thread a pool ball? I don't know. I'm not judging, but in this video I'll show you how you can do it and what to expect. In my case, I'm making a stand, it's a work in progress, for all the pool accessories. And it's just a prototype at the moment, but the idea is, when I finally build the finished version out of cherry, this will get inserted into that, and the finished piece of furniture will rest on 4 billiards balls like this. Drilling out the exact center of a sphere is a rather precise process. It's unforgiving, and that's because a sphere is the three-dimensional analog of a circle, and the eye is just good at telling when a circle's off. It's just one of those picky shapes that, if it isn't right, we'll know it. I've gone over it in the past, but we will review. The secret is to drill out a nest first, remove the drill bit and swap it without moving the nest, and then replacing the bit and drilling again. Of course there are other ways to do it, but if you want to do it perfectly, that's how you'll have to do it. Let's go over the procedure once again. 2x4, clamp down on your drill press. Big bit that you can drill out a nest with. Remove this bit without adjusting the board that the nest is in. Place your ball. Now put the drill bit into your drill press and proceed to drill. If you follow exactly this procedure, both your nest and the hole that you drill into the ball will be perfectly aligned at their center. And you might wonder, why didn't I use that procedure here? I don't know. Do as I say, not as I do. This piece of PVC pipe fits over a hole saw cutout, and so it's screwed to the board. In this case, because I never do things the same way twice, I simply used a piece of 1/4-inch rod as a fake dummy bit and used it to find the center here, and then I swapped it out with the bit that I used for tapping. I recommend, however, that you use the nest procedure. It's better. If you already have a nest drilled, like in this case, it's a rather easy setup. You put the bit that made the nest back into the chuck, and you bring it down so that it rubs along the nest, and while the drill press is running, you can clamp the nest down. And that way you'll find really close to exactly the way it was without ever moving it. And now we check for error, and again, I will remind you that the procedure that I showed you at first is better than this one, but this is certainly close enough for what we're doing. The drill bit was a 13/64, recommended with this 1/4-20 tap that is horizontal in the vise. No oil is necessary. The material is nice and soft. It's easy to feel when it's cutting. Another reason not to use lubricant is, in this case, I'm going to use epoxy to cement a piece of all thread in. and we wouldn't want an oil to interfere with the bond. Watch up here because there's a shoulder on the tap. We don't want to drive that all the way in because we might spald the top surface of the sphere. Just come right up to it and kiss it. Now we're done. Really makes a nice level. A piece of threaded rod is going to be permanently fixed inside of these balls. But let's start with a toothpick. We want to know exactly how deep the hole is, and further, how far down the rod can go. And now we try to align that little pencil mark with the shoulder on the tap. And now we can easily compare how deep we drilled with how deep we tapped. We want our awl thread to be somewhere in between, probably about here. This is how much material we will insert. And that happens to be about 1.5 inches, and we'll make the total 3 inches. The angle grinder is everybody's favorite way to cut threaded rod, but when size matters, something like this is really useful. It does a bunch of different sizes. 1/4 inch rod isn't tough to cut with a hacksaw, so this device is pretty nice. Keep your eye right here. This is where the cut will be made, and we just thread by rotating the rod until we get exactly the size we want to cut. The block wore out over time because the guide cut was too close to the end, so learn from my mistake and make yours back here. When using a hacksaw, make full-length strokes like this. Because if you do what's popular and just go like this, you'll wear out the center of your blade. It's possible for a person to lay down on a bed of nails. Try to remember that trick whenever you're using a vise to grab something threaded. The more of the threads you grab, the less likely you are to damage it. Getting the hacksaw started is the tricky part. Once you get going, it's easy enough. But what's the point of doing this? Well, what we're doing is making a crude tap. That way we can further embed the rod into the ball, in the part of it that the tap didn't reach. The cut will also give a place for the dust to go. A pair of jam nuts on the end turns it into a tool. Now we're just going to try to tap out a few extra rotations. Most important thing, don't strip it. Just take what we can get. And once we feel as though we've risked enough, back it out, clean it. Now it's time for epoxy. Not too much. We're just trying to cover the threads, not fill the hole. Most of the epoxy is just going to get pushed into the back of the hole, and that's why there's a little reservoir in there. That is, we intentionally made the hole deeper than we could have possibly got the awl thread, and that will make a spot for excess epoxy to go. Because unlike air, a liquid epoxy is not going to compress very easily. Let's not risk too much. Epoxy is really strong, but until it does set up, it easily cleans up with alcohol. Just threading it in directly to the piece of furniture is not the best way to do it. But it's not all that bad either. Consider for a second what I was saying earlier about a bunch of threads resisting the force of the vise. Same thing goes for this. If you have really deep threads, then it will resist a force that's going this way. Also note that this piece of furniture is really lightweight. And besides, if the ball is tight enough that it comes into physical contact with the leg, then no matter how much weight you put onto this, it's not going to break the threads because the ball is going to resist it. But if I were trying to make the best possible piece of furniture, I would probably insert either a T-nut or a coupler nut into the leg itself. In addition, I would also have a nut on here to set it. And then the height could be adjusted for each foot by threading in and out, and then tightening the nut like a jam nut. Here's some easy drawer hardware. Tie a knot in some paracord and loop it through a piece of copper. The copper tubing was lacquered just to keep it from oxidizing. These two little cups are for the back end of pull sticks, and they're lined with felt. Also lined with felt is this surface to keep you from dinging your pull cue, this surface, and these little clips. Not bad for a junky piece of furniture that was about to go into the garbage. This would make a pretty great prank if you and your buddies play pool. You can't even tell. Let's try it out. This is pretty strange. They want to undo. I guess you have to spin them in the other direction. This is rubber. It would probably work better on a low friction surface. Pool balls can have other uses too. For example, on my brake, cemented in place with auto body putty, close to 20 years ago now. And pool balls are manufactured to a ridiculously high standard. Like, you won't believe it. Make sure it's zeroed first. And now, the interesting thing about these is that they're supposed to be 2 1/4, and look at that, 2 1/4 on the money. While there might be some variation in the diameter between the individual balls, their roundness it's nearly spot on. Look at that. Perfect. Okay, so we go to a different ball, and the diameter might be different. In this case, it's about a hair. And I do mean a hair literally. If I measure one of my hairs, it will read 0.0015. Now I try the ball in a different spot. And the same reading again. So while they do vary by up to a hair or two per ball, their roundness is nearly flawless. It's really impressive. Hope you found something interesting in this video. See you on the next subject.